Shalom, all praises to the Most High. Uh, we're going to discuss picking up the cross and sacrifice, self-denial. Okay, let's start at John chapter 19, verse 16 to 17. Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified, and they took Yeshua and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha. So we see that Yeshua was bearing his cross, but where was he taking his cross to? Yeshua picked up the cross and walked with it to his death willingly, being the sacrificial lamb for his people. This was the ultimate form of denying self. He followed Yah's will, even though it was hard and painful, to fulfill a greater purpose. Luke chapter 22, verse 41 to 44. And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. And his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Matthew 10, 37 to 39, verses 37 to 39. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. He that findeth his life shall lose it. He that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Abraham displayed this faith and denial by leaving his family, going to a land he didn't know, and many other things. But the biggest of all is in Genesis chapter 21, verse 1 through 8. And Yahuwah visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahuwah did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which Elohim had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised the son Isaac, being 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, Elohim hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. And she said, Who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given child suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast that same day that Isaac was weaned. So here we see that Abraham really yearned for a son. He wanted a heir for everything that he had and to go into the land, right? He had to wait so long for Yahuwah to give him that seed that will possess the land and furthermore produce us in Yeshua, right? So he waited years and years and years for Yahuwah to actually give him a son through Sarah. And then when Yahuwah gives him the son, Yahuwah tells him, you have to offer your son up. Let's see what Abraham did. Let's go to Genesis chapter 22, verse 1 through 12. And it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here am I. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went unto the place of which Elohim had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place far off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together, and they came to the place which Elohim had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid wood in order, and bound his Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest Elohim, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham was blessed because of this. Let's go to verse 15 to 18. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, say Yahuwah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. By denying of self and self-interest, and offering up his only son, Isaac, who was the chosen. This is why he said his only son. Remember, Abraham was constantly denying himself. Constantly, when you just go back and read the accounts of Abraham. But this was the ultimate self-denial. How many people are willing to offer up their son? Abraham was willing, you see. And by Abraham doing this, that's when the Israelites will ultimately be chosen and go into the land. Because when Abraham passed this test of the ultimate self-denial, showing that he truly trusts and loves Yahuwah, this is what caused his seed to be blessed and chosen. Okay, but let's move on. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2. We're going to go from 1 through 3. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him the ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. Let's go to verse 10 through 15. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, Because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens. And he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me, as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian, down by a well. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23 to 27. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of Elohim than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, as seeing him who is invisible. So we see that Moses forsook being royalty with Egypt to fulfill a bigger purpose, Yah had for him. We read this in verse 28. It says, through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroy the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do were drowned. So we see that Moses was living like royalty with the Egyptian Pharaoh and his daughter. But he chose rather to stand up for his people and kill this Egyptian man and bury him in the sand when he saw the afflictions of his people. And then he ran and fled from Pharaoh and ran into another land and pretty much left all that he had in Egypt, all the royalty, all his status. But Moses ended up becoming one of the greatest leaders. Yah used him to lead Israel out of Egypt and into the promised land. Okay? So we see that when we deny ourselves and our own self-interest and our own self-will, that the Most High will use us for a greater purpose. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1, verse 1 through 6. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, to Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahuwah gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of Elohim, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning, and knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Let's go to verse 8 through 10. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now Elohim had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear, my lord the king, who have appointed your meat and your drink, for why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Let's go to verse 12 to 14. Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat, which is beans and legumes, and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. So we see that Daniel and his 3 friends said, look, we don't want to eat the king's meat because it's defiling. They chose not to give away their birthright as Esau, who gave away his birthright just for food. Okay. And we see many of our people who don't even want to deny themselves from pork and shellfish and things that are unclean, still giving away their birthright for food, just as Esau. But Yahuwah blessed them because of this self-denial. Let's go to verse 19 to 21. And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the 1st year of King Cyrus. You see that? So the Most High blessed them. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 46. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your Elohim is an Elohim of Elohims, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, did he request Gentiles to sit with him and rule? Did he request other nations? Like our people, they get a certain status and they always want to integrate with the other nations. Did he do that? Nope. He sat Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. See that? So we see that Daniel denied himself and his friends denied themselves. And the Most High gave them wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and gave them interpretations of dreams. And when they interpreted this dream, they got even higher status than what they had before, denying of self. Let's go to Daniel chapter 3, verse 2 to 3. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, sent to gather together the princes of the governors and the captains and the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces, to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Let's go to verse 5 to 6. That at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And whoso falleth not down in worship shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Let's go to verse 12 to 14. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? And we see in verse 15, we could keep going to verse 26. Now, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if you worship not, you shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that Elohim that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, who we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake, and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because of the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the son of Elohim. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High Elohim, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire. Let's go to verse 28 to 30. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own Elohim. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other Elohim that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So we see that through denying of self, we will endure the fiery trials that Yah will try us with, and Yah will exalt and promote us to a higher status and royalty over the earth in Yeshua's kingdom. This thing that these 3 boys went through was actually a shadow of the times to come and a shadow of the times beforehand that happened with Abraham. Okay, this is how the Most High worked. If you really pay attention to your own life, really open your eyes and be observant and vigilant and pay attention to your own life, and you will see that the Most High will do metaphoric things in your life that will coincide and they will go hand in hand with the scriptures. For instance, people that are farming could see how the Most High, through the works that they do in their everyday life, reveal things to them metaphorically through the scriptures. They will see these things. So we really must pay attention. But the same way that these 3 boys were thrown in a fiery furnace, the Most High is going to try the earth. And those who are going to come against the saints and the children of the Most High will be ultimately burned up in the end. And the Most High seed will pass through the fire and come out shiny like gold and will be promoted to a higher status and royalty over the whole earth from Holy Jerusalem. But those who deny their self and their own self-will and interests will be the ones that will be chosen for this. Let's go to Matthew chapter 19, verse 27 to 29. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Yeshua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. We have to forsake our own fleshly desires, motives, and what we think is best for us, and follow Yah's will and purpose for our life. Even when it seems strange, even when it seems hard, even when we have to strip ourselves of things we fleshly falsely love, and separate ourselves from people who we think is for us when Yah shows us otherwise. This is totally trusting in Yah and denial of self. Yah has a bigger purpose for our lives instead of just living for Satan's system. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I am crucified with Mashiach. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Mashiach liveth in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of Elohim, who loved me and gave himself for me. You see that? So as Yeshua sacrificed himself, We must sacrifice ourselves in this way. Okay? Yah has a bigger purpose for our lives. When we follow our own self will, we may achieve fleshly things, increase in finances, and achieve worldly status, but that all fades away and will be burned like stubble. Psalms 49, 6 to 14. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to Elohim a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever, that he should still live forever, and not see corruption. For he see that wise men die. Likewise the fool and the brutish person perish, and leave their wealth to others. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly. Yet their posterity approve their sayings. Selah. Like sheep they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. Verse 17 to 20. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee, when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers. They shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. Those who follow Yah's will lack nothing in this life. Psalm 37, verse 25 to 27. I have been young, and now am old. Yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful, and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. Depart from evil, and do good, and dwell forevermore. Matthew chapter 6, verse 31 to 33. Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Those who deny themselves and own self-will and follow the Most High's will and purpose for their life and to the end will live forever. Let's go to Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust do corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust do corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Psalms 49, verse 15. But Elohim will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Selah. People, your jobs, your family, and your flesh will try and tempt you to not follow Yah's will and purpose for your life and sin. This is Satan's ultimate goal. But remember Esther, how Esther put her life on the line when she could have easily just sat back and said, hey, I'm a queen. Has nothing to do with me. I can remain royalty. But no, she stuck her neck out and put her life on the line and had faith in the Most High for her people, following the Most High's purpose and will for her life. And what happened? She ended up staying royalty and got promoted to a higher status, and her people got saved, right? And Daniel, when Daniel said, no, I'm going to still praise the Most High and reverence the Most High, no matter what these laws say. He was thrown into the lion's den, right? And when he was thrown into the lion's den, the Most High delivered him, and he was promoted to a higher status amongst the Persians. Mordecai, when he chose not to idolize a wicked man, Haman, and not bow down to him, the Most High delivered him out of the hands of his enemies and delivered the Jews and Esther, and Mordecai was promoted to a higher position. Hannah, Samuel's mother, when she said, you know what, I'm going to give my son to you, because it's your purpose and your will. The Most High blessed her and her son, and her son began to become one of the greatest judges in Israel, who anointed two kings. One king who fell from grace, but David, who was the greatest king of Israel. And ultimately, Yeshua, who put his life on the line, was the ultimate sacrifice, taught us ultimate self-denial, ultimately not following his own will and following the will and purpose that the Most High had for him, and suffered pain and affliction and suffering, who didn't come down here to marry anyone, didn't fulfill his own purposes, his own will, didn't even have a home to dwell in, just went from place to place to fulfill the Most High's purpose and will, and died for us that we may have a chance to enter into the kingdom. All of these people put their life to the side and follow the Most High's will and purpose for their life. But guess what? When you do this, you will ultimately see what happiness is about. Our minds will be at peace, and we will be truly successful, not having the worldly riches and the things of the world, but be miserable, but truly walking with the Most High, and he will bless us. Like we read in Psalms, he said, I never saw any of the righteous seed begging for bread. So we must be willing to sacrifice jobs, money, lands, friends, family, self-interest, and ambitions in our own lives if Yah calls for us to do so for his will and purpose in the kingdom's sake. Let's go to Matthew chapter 10, verse 39 to close it out. He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. We were raised and taught in this wicked satanic system to figure our own lives out, to try to find our own life, to try to figure out what it is for us to do on our own, to follow our own self-will and self-interests. And ultimately, you will see that these people, once again, may achieve worldly riches and status and accolades, but a lot of these people die miserable and broke and never really find that true peace of mind because they follow the American dream or the Babylonian way of thinking to try to find their own life. But let's lose our life and let Yah ultimately guide us and show us his will and purpose for our life. Pray for me as I pray for those who hear this. Surrender your life to Yah. Hallelujah. Shalom.